Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with me on the future of learning.
I'm excited to be here.
I'm really fascinated by this chapter we're going to unpack today.
Yes.
From this book, I found it's all about, how technology can really create these like more effective and connected learning experiences.
Yeah.
And it really dives deep into this concept called interoperability.
Yeah.
Which,
It sounds kind of technical and jargony.
Yeah, but it's actually something that like affects all of us, whether we realize it or not.
It really does. And the chapter opens with this great analogy.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine you're trying to build a house, but the plumbers and the electricians and the carpenters, they're all working from like totally different blueprints.
Right.
And that's kind of like what our current learning ecosystem is like.
Oh.
Different systems, different data formats, and they don't talk to each other very well.
Okay. Yeah, I can see how that would create some problems.
Yeah, for sure. And think about like your own life, right? All the different places you've learned things, schools, online courses, workshops, even just like through experience.
Yeah, it's true. Like my learning journey is kind of all over the place.
Exactly. And because these systems don't talk to each other, it's hard to like get a complete picture of your skills and knowledge.
Mm.
And this impacts everything from transferring credits between colleges to like showing potential employers everything you're capable of.
Yeah.
The chapter even quotes Amber Garrison Duncan,
Oh.
who points out that like the lack of a connected infrastructure in higher education is a major obstacle.
Yeah. That's a really good point because I think we often think about it as like, oh, it's just inconvenient, but it's really about like,
Yeah.
being able to represent yourself accurately, all that work that you've put in.
It's about recognizing and valuing your learning wherever it happens.
And so that's where this idea of interoperability comes in, right?
Exactly. It's about creating a common language, standards, and ways for these different systems to connect and share data.
Okay, so instead of having all these separate pieces of like your learning journey,
Yeah.
it could all kind of be brought together
Exactly.
into like a cohesive whole.
And that's incredibly powerful both for individuals and organizations. For you, it could mean having a personalized learning pathway that takes into account all your prior experiences,
Right.
no matter where they happened.
That makes so much sense.
It could also make it much easier to demonstrate your skills to potential employers or even pursue further education.
Yeah, like it's finally being able to show the full picture,
Right.
not just like these little pieces.
Yeah.
Okay,
This is not a simple fix.
Right. Interoperability sounds like a really big, complex undertaking.
It is.
Are there different types of interoperability?
Yeah, there are. The chapter actually outlines five different types.
Yeah.
But for this conversation, I think it's helpful to focus on two that are most impactful for learners like you: data interoperability and organizational interoperability.
Okay, let's start with data interoperability.
Okay.
What does that actually mean?
Well, imagine if every country had its own unique electrical plug. It
Oh.
would be a nightmare to travel with your devices.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that.
Right.
I've been there.
Yeah, so data interoperability is like creating a universal plug
Okay.
that lets different learning systems connect seamlessly.
So it's kind of like a common language for data.
Yeah, it's about having common data standards. So information about like what you've learned and the skills you've developed can be shared and understood across systems.
Okay.
For example, let's say you took an amazing online course on project management.
Right.
With data interoperability, that information could be automatically added to your educational record,
Wow.
making it easy to share with potential employers.
That would be so convenient.
Right. No more scrambling to remember all the details of every course you've ever taken.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And it's not even just about convenience. It's about making sure that all that work is recognized.
Exactly.
Right.
And valued regardless of where or how you learned it. And then organizational interoperability is all about breaking down the silos between different organizations and institutions.
Right.
So, for example, getting universities to talk to businesses.
Right.
Or government agencies to share data with nonprofits.
That sounds like a huge undertaking.
Yeah, it can be a challenge.
Especially given that I imagine different organizations have different priorities.
Right.
They might not want to share information.
Sure. But the potential benefits are huge.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where your learning journey is seamlessly documented and accessible no matter where or how you learned.
Right.
What do you think? What would make this valuable for you?
For me, I think it would be incredible to have a system that like recognizes and values all the learning I've done.
Yeah.
Both inside and outside of like traditional educational settings.
Sure.
And I think it would also be amazing to be able to like easily connect with learning opportunities and resources
Yeah.
that are tailored to my specific needs and goals.
Those are great. And this chapter actually outlines a 4-step strategy for achieving greater interoperability.
Okay.
And it starts with something that might surprise you.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It all starts with identifying and defining your own personal competencies.
Okay.
Basically, what knowledge, skills, and abilities are essential for you to achieve your goals.
Okay, so it's not just about connecting the systems.
Right.
It's about understanding, like, what makes me valuable.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting. The chapter uses this analogy of competencies being like the common currency of this future learning ecosystem.
So instead of just focusing on degrees or certifications,
yeah.
we're talking about like breaking it down into the actual skills and knowledge that matter.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And by defining your competencies in a clear way, you create this like shared language that can bridge the gap between different systems and organizations.
Okay.
It's like having a universal translator for your skills and knowledge.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Right.
But you know, the world is changing so rapidly. Like, I can't imagine just studying my competencies once and being done with it. I'm constantly learning and growing.
You're absolutely right. Competencies aren't static. They evolve over time.
Okay.
The chapter even talks about something called skills decay estimates.
Skills decay.
Yeah.
Is that like when you forget how to ride a bike because you haven't done it in years?
It's a similar concept.
Okay.
Skills and knowledge can atrophy over time if they're not used or reinforced.
Makes sense.
So it's important to not only track what you've learned, but also when you learned it.
Okay.
And how often you use those skills.
It's not just about what you know, but like how current your knowledge is.
Exactly.
Okay, but how do you actually keep track of all that?
Well, this is where the concept of activity streams comes in.
Activity streams.
Yeah, think of it like a detailed log of all the actions and interactions that take place during your learning journey.
So it's like a digital footprint of everything you do to learn and grow.
Exactly.
Wow.
And by using standardized language and data formats, we can make those activity streams machine readable and transferable across systems.
So it's like creating a universal transcript that documents not just like your formal education, but all the learning you do.
It's a powerful concept.
Throughout your life. Yeah.
And it's closely tied to the idea of universal learner profiles.
Okay.
Instead of just having a transcript that lists the courses you've taken and the grades you got.
Right.
Imagine a comprehensive profile that captures all your skills, knowledge, and experiences.
I can see how that would be incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
For both learners and employers.
For sure.
But how do we ensure that all this data is used responsibly?
That's a critical question.
Yeah.
You, as the learner, need to have control over your own data.
Right.
You need to be able to trust that the information you share will be used ethically and securely.
So it's about like striking a balance.
Yes.
Between access and protection. You want the data to be accessible so it can benefit you.
Right.
But you also want to make sure it's not misused.
Absolutely. The chapter delves into some really interesting ideas about data governance and privacy.
Okay.
But for now, let's focus on one last concept that ties into activity streams.
Okay.
Activity registries.
Activity registries.
Yeah.
So activity streams are about tracking individual actions.
Right.
What are registries for?
Think of activity registries like a vast library of learning resources, tagged and categorized for easy discovery. They contain rich metadata that describes what each resource is, about how it's structured, and how it aligns with different competencies.
So it's like having a personalized learning concierge that like curates the best options for me.
Yeah.
Based on my goals and my interests.
Based on your needs.
That sounds amazing.
And because these registries can be accessed by different learning platforms, it creates a much more connected and dynamic learning ecosystem.
Yeah. I'm already seeing how all of this could transform the way we learn and develop our skills.
Yeah.
This is pretty exciting stuff.
It is.
But I'm curious, how does this actually play out in the real world? Does the chapter offer any like concrete examples?
It does. And you might be surprised to learn that even in highly structured organizations like the military, there's a huge need for interoperability.
Really? I wouldn't have guessed that.
It's true. The chapter uses the example of military training to illustrate how even within a single organization, there can be a significant disconnect. Between different schools, programs, and systems.
So even in a setting where you might expect like a high degree of standardization. these data silos still exist.
They do, and this is where the chapter digs into a really important distinction between training and education.
Okay, help me understand the difference in this context.
So traditionally, education has been seen as a more gradual process, focused on exploration and reflection. Training, on the other hand, is often about applying knowledge and skills in a very practical, measurable way.
So different goals, different approaches.
Right.
And that leads to different systems that don't always talk to each other.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this results in data fragmentation, even when you're dealing with a single organization.
Right.
The chapter points out that this is especially problematic in the military, where service members might receive training in a variety of settings throughout their careers.
I see the challenge, like how can they demonstrate the full scope of their experience if the data is scattered?
And this is where interoperability comes in.
Right.
By connecting those systems and creating a shared language for describing skills and competencies.
Okay.
The military could gain a much more comprehensive understanding of its workforce.
That makes a lot of sense. And I bet the same principles could be applied to other industries as well.
Absolutely.
Like healthcare, nurses and doctors.
Yeah. They receive training and education from a variety of sources.
Right.
And their skills and competencies need to be constantly updated.
Yeah, it's like the need for a connected learning ecosystem is everywhere.
It is.
And you know what's great about this chapter is that it goes beyond just outlining the problem.
Yeah.
It actually provides some really practical advice for organizations.
It does.
Looking to improve their interoperability.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready for the inside scoop.
Yeah.
What are some of the key takeaways organizations can implement?
Well, it starts with getting really clear about those core competencies.
Right. We talked about those earlier, kind of like the DNA of an organization.
Yeah, the essential skills and knowledge that drive success.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the chapter emphasizes that, like, every single role within an organization should have a clearly defined competency framework.
Okay.
We're talking about outlining not just the skills needed, but also the levels of mastery required at different stages of a career.
So it's not just about knowing how to do something, it's about knowing how well you need to do it.
Exactly.
To really excel in that role.
And that level of detail can be a game changer for talent management.
Yeah.
It allows organizations to, like, pinpoint skill gaps, create personalized development plans for their employees, and make more informed decisions about hiring and promotions.
It's like having this tailored roadmap for talent development.
It is.
Specific to the organization.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
But competencies are just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Right. The chapter also stresses the importance of a comprehensive data strategy.
Okay, break that down for me. What does that actually entail?
It means thinking about all the different types of data that are relevant to learning and talent development.
Okay.
And it's not just about collecting that data.
Right.
It's about managing it effectively, securely, and ethically.
So we're talking about like data labeling, security protocols, access control, all that essential stuff.
All of that.
Yeah.
And it also involves understanding the life cycle of data. You know, some data is timeless,
right?
But other data points become less relevant over time.
Like that training I did years ago on a software program that's now totally obsolete.
Exactly. It's all about knowing the shelf life of different data points and having systems in place to manage them accordingly.
Makes sense. You don't want to be making decisions based on outdated information.
Right.
But let's circle back to those silos for a moment. How do we actually get these different systems to talk to each other?
That's where standards come in.
Okay.
And the chapter is very clear on this point. We need standardized data formats and common vocabularies so that everyone is speaking the same language.
Right, so the data can flow seamlessly between these systems.
And there are some exciting initiatives already underway.
Oh, yeah.
The chapter talks about the Learning Resource Metadata Initiative, or LRMI.
LRMI. Okay, remind me what metadata is again.
Think of metadata as like labels on a filing cabinet.
Okay.
They tell you what's inside each drawer without you having to open it.
Okay.
It's data about data.
Got it. So LRMI is basically creating standardized labels for all the learning resources out there.
Exactly.
Wow.
And here's what's really cool. LRMI is built on an open standard called schema.org.
Okay.
Which means it's compatible with major search engines like Google.
So if I'm looking for a specific type of learning resource online, I can use keywords that align with those standardized descriptions.
That's right. It makes searching for and finding relevant learning opportunities much easier.
Awesome.
It also allows different learning platforms to share information about their resources in a way that's machine readable, further breaking down those silos.
It's like creating this universal catalog for learning that's amazing. But, you know, the chapter goes even further and explores how learning and talent management are becoming increasingly intertwined.
Yeah, the traditional boundaries between education, training, and work are blurring,
Right.
which means we need systems that can bridge those gaps.
So instead of viewing these things as separate silos, we need to think of them as like interconnected parts of this larger talent ecosystem.
The chapter proposes this idea of a common digital record
Oh, wow.
that captures an individual's entire career journey,
Okay.
including their education, training, work, experience, skills, and competencies.
That would be so valuable.
It's like having a comprehensive resume
Yeah.
that tells the full story of your professional development.
It's even more than a resume.
Yeah.
It's like
It is.
this dynamic profile that shows how you've grown
Exactly.
and evolved over time.
And this empowers both individuals and organizations.
Right.
Imagine employers being able to easily identify candidates who have the specific skills and experience they need,
Right.
or individuals being able to showcase their unique talents and connect with opportunities that align with their aspirations.
That paints a picture of a much more efficient and equitable talent marketplace.
It does, and it highlights the transformative potential of interoperability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to bring it back to our listener. What are some key takeaways they can apply to their own lives and careers?
I think the biggest takeaway is to be aware of the limitations of our current systems. You know, if you've ever felt frustrated trying to piece together your own learning journey or articulate the full range of your skills, you're not alone.
Yeah,
The lack of interoperability is a real problem,
it is.
but recognizing it is the first step towards finding solutions.
It's like trying to explain a complex concept with a limited vocabulary. You just can't fully express it.
But the good news is that there are people working on solutions.
That's good.
And as individuals, we can advocate for greater interoperability both within our own organizations and in the broader learning ecosystem.
So things like asking your employer about their competency framework,
Yes.
or choosing learning platforms that embrace open standards and data portability.
Those are great examples.
Okay.
By taking these small steps, we can contribute to building a more connected and effective learning ecosystem that benefits everyone.
I love that it's empowering to know that we can all play a role in shaping this future.
Absolutely. And as you continue your own learning journey, remember to consider this in a world where your learning is seamlessly documented and accessible. What role will you play in shaping its future?
That's a fantastic question to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the future of learning. And as always, we encourage you to explore the source material further and continue the conversation.